Yeah, I don't know where else on Tuesday you can get hospitality like you did from Aggieland Hospitality, operated by Levy. Quick shout out there, but trying to make sure this thing goes really well for you. And the other thing I just want to address before we start is the Dalton Brooks situation. Obviously, that's something that we're aware of. Issues like that are things that we take very serious in our program, and we'll look into it internally. We'll handle it internally. It's not something we're going to talk about how we're going to handle, but it is obviously something that we take very seriously internally inside of our program, and so we're on it and we're handling it. From there, it's camp. It's 5 practices in, so you're going to want big statements and let you know how everything is, and I don't have any of that for you, so why don't you guys fire away with questions, and we'll see where we go.
Howdy, Coach.
Howdy.
Amari Knoblack looks amazing. I mean, he's a physical specimen, and he looks like he's catching everything they throw his way. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen so far, and also when did he first hit on your radar in the recruiting process?
Yeah, from a recruiting standpoint, I think I've addressed this before. I think it was an interesting one just because of his relationship with Coach Wiggins. And so when he entered the transfer portal, he had been with Coach Wiggins at Alabama, and so he didn't have the best year last year, but I think there was a prior track record of what he was capable of and what his potential was. And so that's what kind of created it. We were looking for a taller pass catcher at that point in the process, and so that's kind of what made it a connection and a fit. And then, I think what you see from him is just a really tall, long, athletic kid. And so, he's continuing to get comfortable, continuing to develop in the things that we're doing, and I think he has a chance to be a weapon for us this year if he can keep going.
Coach, in your career, you've coached against and even coached some college football quarterbacks who've led teams to college football playoffs. Is there a common denominator between who they are as a person, or even statistically, what kind of makes a college football playoff quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, certainly not statistically, and certainly not in terms of package as a quarterback. I think you've seen it a lot of different ways. I think you've seen pocket passers. I think you've seen kids who are dual threats. I think you've seen kids who run better than they throw. I think in the last, 5-6 years, you've kind of seen the whole gamut of quarterbacks get into that position. I think the trait that you're looking for is the competitiveness, the ability to lift others around them, the ability to kind of bring a group together and galvanize a group to follow and play hard for each other. I think that's probably more than anything the trait that is consistent through them all. And so I think I think that's what you need. You need a quarterback that can do those types of things. And then you've got to build an offense around what your quarterback does really well. And if you can do those two things, you've got a chance.
Okay, I'm going to steal Olin's thunder here, and I got a 2-part question.
Oh, boy. Are you allowed to, Mark? Olin, do you want to approve this?
I'm not the second oldest of the bunch.
I know. I'm just saying, listen, Olin's the only one who's ever done 2-part questions, so I wanted to make sure we were good.
Well, I'll get the entry question out of the way. That's number one. How are you guys doing 5 practices in on that front?
Great.
Okay. Easy enough. Number 2, you got a lot of new faces on the defensive line, guys that are kind of moving positions a little bit. How do you feel about what you've seen out of them in this very limited sampling size?
Yeah, again, I think there's potential there. It's the same names. There's not anything new. I think early in camp, just a couple names that maybe haven't been on the radar that have flashed a little bit and maybe are trying to get themselves in the mix. Dalen Evans has had a really strong 3 days. That's been really good to see from him. We kind of challenged him to step up and try to go get one of those spots in the rotation, and that's been cool to see. And I think, I think Marco Jones, with the summer development that he had, I think has elevated himself even a little bit more from where he was in the spring. And so, those are 2 guys who maybe we haven't talked a ton about in that group, and the rest of the group, I think, is kind of at this point still what we've said. I think there's a lot of pieces in there, a lot of veterans who've played a lot of football. We got to see them put it all together consistently here over the next, week and a half when we get full pads on and that stuff.
To the right, Olin.
I got a 3-part question now.
There you go. I figured that was coming.
But it is kind of convoluted, Coach. Last year in run defense, y'all were actually really sound most of the time, and then the tendency to give up the big plays. And I guess my question is, when y'all evaluated over the offseason, things like that, was there anything that typically kept showing up as to the problem there? And moving forward, do y'all put more emphasis on that the rest of camp, or is that something you just, it just happens?
Yeah, no, it certainly wouldn't. It was a good question. It certainly wouldn't say it just happens. I think that was the story of us on defense. We talked about that. We were play in, play out a lot more efficient than we were overall production-wise because of explosives. That was in the run game and the pass game. I think you're dead on in the run game. I think a couple things that we've really tried to emphasize and point out to them. One is, what is the difference between being 11-12 in the conference and 2-3 in the conference, and how small those margins are. And those margins usually come down to those plays, and so a lot of times kids have a tendency to walk off the field thinking about the 3 plays that they've made. We've tried to maybe hey, let's focus on the 3 that we didn't and how we fix those to kind of continue to try to get those out of the system. I think when you look at it schematically, I think the big runs happen, 2 ways. They happen, one, because of a misfit or somebody being out of a gap, which certainly happened at times, not a ton, but at times. Where we got in a lot of trouble last year was losing perimeter leverage, whether that was a run that kind of got through and then got outside, or a run that was designed to get outside. We did a really poor job at times of leveraging the football properly. And so, what you do is you go out and you put all of them on tape. You show them to the guys consistently. When you get into practice now, when you point something out in practice and you say, okay, hey, this is the run from South Carolina, this is the play right here, this is the decision you make that costs you the ability to, there's a little bit more understanding of how it can impact them. Whereas maybe last year in fall camp, you were saying, hey, don't do this. You kind of get a little bit of okay, but they don't really know the issue with doing that, if that makes any sense. And so I think when you're talking specifically about hey, that's why we gave up a big play at South Carolina, that's why we gave up a big run against Notre Dame, it hits home a little bit more and makes those problems a little bit more fixable. And so you hope that just continues to go as we go through camp.
To the left, second.
That was a 3-part answer.
Hey, Mike, just as Mark Naboo continues to come back from his injury, just what have you seen from him so far in fall camp, and just how competitive might that center position be in competition?
Yeah, I think, obviously we want competition across the offensive line, and I think we're getting it. I think we have 3 kids who have a chance to play center for us. Mark and Coley are the obvious 2, and then I think Trey Zook is another kid who's getting a lot of reps in at that position. I think what we've seen from Mark is a kid who's now, I think, confident and trusting it. In the spring when you first come back, it's still sore. It doesn't feel exactly like you want it to. There's probably a little bit of a lack of trust in terms of how healthy you really are. But then you come out of it and you're okay, and you go back to work in the summer. And so I think, through 5 practices, I just think he appears to be back to the player that we always thought he could be. And so that's been good. And I think he's taken another step from his competitive nature. I think he's taken another step from his ability to finish blocks. And so, again, hopefully that continues as we move forward.
Right, Carter.
So you said Trey Zook at center. Is that seriously considered, or is that kind of a depth option for you guys?
No, I think we've done that quite a bit, going all the way back to the spring. I think it's part of the conversation, and we've talked about this before. We move kids around a lot so that we can always ensure the best 5 kids are out there. And there's certainly lineups that have Demetrius Crownover and Ruben Fothery as part of the best 5. Now, whether that's the first 5 or that's 1 injury in or 2 injuries in, I don't know. Competition will determine all of that. But there's certainly the need to have some flexibility with Trey, and that's really been 2-year process. I think last year with where we were, it just never got to it. But again, I think the competition is an ongoing process always.
And as far as the scrimmage this Saturday, what are you kind of looking for? And with how much retention you guys had from the players and the coaching staff, do you put more on them in an initial scrimmage, or is it going to be treated kind of like past scrimmages?
Yeah, I think it'll probably be treated like past scrimmages. I don't know that you put anything more on them. I think the challenge that we've talked about with our guys is you have two different things. You have a veteran group that's been through it before. What you have to make sure is they check every box along the way to prepare themselves for the season. And one of those boxes is preparing yourself for the physicality that it takes to be successful at this level and in this conference. And you only really get those things a handful of times in fall camp. We get 8 days in full pads. And so, it's important that even though, you've been through 4 fall camps, you've been through a bunch of fall camp scrimmages, you have a feel for what this is all about, there's still a preparation process that goes in for this particular season that you have to go through. And so, we'll be smart about how we use some of the guys who are going into year 5 and have certainly played a lot of college football, but there's just a part of it that they have to go through this physicality to get ready to go.
To the left.
5 practices in, what have you seen from the secondary? Maybe what differences do you see at practice now than maybe you did in the past?
Yeah, 5 practices in last year, I wouldn't have told you we would be in the spot we were. But I think what is noticeable is there's a much better comfort level playing together. When you just talk about communication lines, when you're familiar and comfortable playing with the guy next to you, it makes it a lot easier to communicate through the difficult concepts and combinations that get thrown at you. And so, when you talk about, Will Lee, Bryce Anderson, Dalton Brooks, Marcus Radcliffe, Des Ricks, like that group of kids now has played a lot of football together between fall camp, spring ball, the season. So you see that. You see certainly an uptick in their familiarity with each other. Then you see the new guys kind of getting comfortable with the system, with the communications, with the schemes, and you see that happening at a faster rate because there are guys who are more comfortable with it. And so when everybody's trying to figure it out together, it's hard. When there are some experienced guys who can talk through things with guys who are less experienced, that speeds up the process. And so I think you're seeing that happen. Again, we'll see where it goes as we go through the rest of camp.
Coach to the right, David.
Mike's almost been a year since Ruben Owens went down. We didn't expect to see him last year. We got to see him at the very end of the year. Yes, sir.
Because here you guys go again.
I just want to talk about the journey to get to where he is now and what you're seeing from him.
Yeah, no, it's the hardest thing, right? It's the hardest thing for a kid who has high hopes and expectations for what a season is going to be like to get the season taken away from him. And to his credit, like, again, I've said this on multiple occasions and will continue to, for him to come back the way he did, knowing how skilled and talented he is when he's 100%, knowing he wasn't anywhere near that, but still going out to give us anything he could for the last game of the year, to go out into the bowl game and try to shake some of the rust off and get some competitive reps. That's a real credit to who he is as a kid, how he was raised, and how competitive he is. And I think the other thing that maybe happens, and this is the end process of it all, is then you go through the whole rehab, you get back, you get healthy, you get comfortable, and then you get out there and you realize how much you missed it. And maybe there's a little bit of an elevation of urgency because you don't just expect that everything's going to always be there for you. And maybe you've seen that a little bit from him through 5 practices, that he understands how much he loves this game and he loves getting to do it. And his urgency to do it at a really, really high level every rep has probably stepped up, one, because of a year older, but probably one because that's what happens sometimes when it gets taken away from you like it did.
Coach to the left.
Howdy, Coach.
Howdy.
You were very vocal about the USC loss last season. How has the presence of Tyreek Chappelle helped, you fix that problem with that unit?
Yeah, that was like a long time ago that we had that. We've addressed that one a bunch. Tyreek Chappelle, I'll talk about him. Tyreek Chappelle is the best cover guy we have in the secondary that can play in the slot, and that matters. And when we lost him last year, it drastically impacted us playing the way we wanted to play. Having him back, having him out there, those things matter. He's got flexibility with where he can play. He's got an ability to be a matchup guy for us, which are always critical in your secondary. And so, yeah, it's really good to have him back and healthy.
To the right, Coach Christie.
It might be a little too early for big picture questions,
Oh,
but
boy.
I just wondered, what do you hope to be the identity of your team this season, and how do you hope to instill that after you? I did a two-parter too.
That's okay. I think we've opened up the floodgates now. Thanks, Mark. Listen, I think we want the identity of this team to be a team that pours everything they have into each other, into playing this game together the right way for themselves and for Texas A&M University. I think that's always kind of been the mantra. That shows up in how hard we play. That shows up in how physical we play. That shows up in the consistency of how we do that every single week. That's kind of been the standard we've tried to create within this program from day one. How you instill it is it's what we live every day. It's the things that we talk about in every team meeting. It's the things that we illustrate on film for the positive and the negative. It's the things that we are just constantly trying to pound into the program. And I worded it to him this way in the first team meeting. I said one of the biggest challenges is you're at an age group that across the board kind of see things as challenging and difficult because that's just what teenagers do. The reality is you're in the elite 1% of your age group in the world. And so there's a certain responsibility that comes with that to put in the work, to take advantage of the blessings and the opportunities that have been put upon you. And I think that's the mindset we want to have in this program. And so it's a daily process. I think we're making progress. I think we're doing the things we want to do.
Coach front left, Tony.
Coach, thinking back to last year when you finally said, or decided Marcel Reed's going to lead this team, offensively be your quarterback, and the things that you had saw from him and hope to project forward, have you seen those come to fruition this offseason, early in the fall, and what have you seen his development look like?
Yeah, I think he's a lot more comfortable going through the progressions. I think that's, when you talk about passing game and this, this gets, there's a lot of conversation that gets had about like separation and guys getting open and so much of the passing game is timing and rhythm. And that's what, as coaches studying it every day, like those are the things that you're trying to see is are the eyes getting to the windows at the same time the routes are getting to the windows. And that's a lot of how we're going to improve our passing game is just an overall efficiency of timing and operation. And I think that is coming. I think you're seeing that get a little bit better every day. There's times where we're getting through progressions better than we did with him at any point last year. And so those were the steps that we felt like he needed to take because a lot of times what you see is a bad throw. What we see is the eyes not moving fast enough or the body and the eyes not in rhythm together, and so poor mechanics because of that, which sometimes leads to bad throws. And so, I think you're starting to see it click a little bit more for him every day.
Coach to the right, far back.
I've got a five-parter, if that's okay.
Nope. I'm drawing the line in the sand now.
In your mind, are you fairly settled if you had to start tomorrow on the 22 guys that will start for you on either side of the ball? Or how many of those, you were talking about the offensive line, how many of those positions you're still waiting to see somebody step up? Yeah,
it's I'm a poor coach if 5 practices in my mind, I know who the 22 are going to be. I think that's a poor reflection of me and how we run a program, in my opinion. And I understand what you're asking me. And there are certainly guys who you look at a large body of work and assume it would be very challenging for them to get beat out. But it's still, I think, our job as coaches to create an environment where everything is up for grabs every single day and that you allow competition to drive performance to a higher level. And so in that end, no. I mean, in that end, there's 22 open spots. And there's the ability every day for someone to come out and elevate themselves, not only into the top 22, but into a higher role, into more reps, into more opportunities. And I just think that's what you owe your locker room. And nobody wants to be part of a program where they feel as though the 22 are set regardless of what performance looks like over the course of 4 weeks. And so to that end, we want it to be very competitive between now and the opener. And then when the opener comes around, we'll figure out which 22 we're going to put out there.
Coach, far back, Donna.
Coach,
Oh,
hello?
I
Is
can
it
hear
loud
you.
enough? Okay,
I can
I'll
hear
just
you.
yell. We've talked a lot about Casey and Mario throughout the offseason, but from what you've seen from Jerome Miles, I know it's a kind of a small sample size, but what kind of impact do you think he can have in his freshman year?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So he was not healthy when we got him. He ran track in the spring, but that was straight line. He was not ready to cut, to decelerate, to do the things a football player needed to do on that knee. And so he's really been rehabbing a lot since we've got him. Now, we can rehab him and still evaluate him. And so obviously there's an athletic skill set that he brings to the table that is really unique. He's tall, he's big, and he can really run. Last night was the first night we were able to really clear him and get him out there and running around and doing some things, and certainly catches the eye with his ability to do that. Now, I've said this to my son, who asks me this question every single day: how does he look? There's a long gap between being able to go out there on air and look athletic and being able to go out there and run routes and get open and be where you need to be. And so, we'll see what it looks like over the next 20 days, but there's certainly a skill set there that we're really excited about.
Okay, anything else for Coach? All right,
Go ahead,
thank
you
you.
got one more. Hold on. You didn't even see him. He raised his hand in the back, middle.
Sorry.
I'll run the podium from there.
Hey, Coach. We've talked a lot about Scooby Williams, 5 practices in. How does he seem to you, and just your evaluation of him so far?
Yeah, I love Scooby. I think he's really athletic. I think he's really twitchy. I think he has the ability to make a lot of plays that maybe are a little bit outside the scheme with how quick and athletic he is. He's a good blitzer. He's a good cover guy. And so, it's good. I think he's still, getting back and getting rolling. He missed the spring. And so, there's some rust that needs to get knocked off of him, and he knows that. But we're excited about how he's going about it every day to kind of get back to who he's capable of being.
Okay.
So, now we'll end. Thank you, guys.